our work right now on the planet is to bring honoring and sanctity to the invisible just as much as the visible. The invisible results are things like feeling good, things like feeling connected, things like our health, our well-being, a feeling of joy, pleasure.
Embodiment can't be faked once you're in an open state where you actually can see through a clear lens. You know, you're not clouded by fear, you're not clouded by the amygdala, you're not clouded by society's news and all the fear-based stuff, and you're just with you. Then you get to decide where you think we actually are.
Energy is information. We're here to experience the full spectrum.
That worthiness is hard for you. There's nothing wrong with you. It is a muscle that we kind of have to learn how to access. You are not disempowered, and you have power in every area of your life all the time.
I believe that chronic illness is an opportunity for us to heal.
Health, it's a choice. Listening to your body if you so choose.
My prayer for the world would be that they would know the infinite love of God.
Aloha and welcome to the Body and Soul Wisdom Podcast, formerly known as the Embodied Healing Self Podcast, with your host, jenmons. Join me each week for soul-inspired, conscious conversations around awakening to your soul purpose through 5-element well-being. Thank you so much for joining in. Aloha and welcome back to the Body and Soul Wisdom Podcast. I seem to be on a little bit of a streak lately talking about busyness. At the end of April, I hosted a 3-day complimentary experience called Resourced. And the intention of that experience was to, one, really understand the 5 elements of wealth or well-being, which is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and financial. 2, we dove a little bit deeper into the aspect of being resourced in all those ways, and we dove deeper into the relationship with money. And 3, got super clear on prosperity, consciousness as embodied trust, diving into the feminine wealth archetypes. And then what came up that wasn't planned to talk about was the spiral of shame. And what came out of that is how we keep ourselves busy and we make things hard because that's how we feel valued and important. For some of us, there's like this subconscious belief or unwritten, I guess, but it's down there somewhere that like we can't have things that we want easily. Like hard work is a badge of honor. We've been talking about badges of honor. We've talked about the wounded badge of empathy. We've talked about, the superwoman badge and the badge of busyness. And we're really burying ourselves in a hole with all these identities that we think are serving us. And one of those is busyness. And this has been a theme in my personal life for so long. And I'm going to speak to the person who might be able to relate to my experience because I can only speak from my experience. I'm talking to the person who, for most of their life, can do things well pretty easily. Everybody struggles with something, but you're the type of person who things come maybe a little bit easier to than others. And I'm talking multiple different things, like maybe art and sports and music and school and relationships and maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. You've been able to create space for, and maybe it's none of those, maybe it's totally something else. But you get my picture. You're able to do things well, and you've been rewarded for it. So maybe you were really good at school. Maybe you were really academic. You were a great student, and you were rewarded for it. So you went to a good college, and you got a good degree, and now you have a good job, and you do good work, and you're still feeling unfulfilled. This is where our survivor strategy, and I'll get into that, what that means, becomes super glamorous, and it hides, it masks what's really happening under the surface. Those are the women I work with. They look like badasses on the surface, and they are. They've got a great job. They have a house. They might be in a healthy marriage. They might have good health, or maybe there's already been a breakdown in one of those. But it looks on the outside like they have it all together. And yet they feel stuck in this cycle of overwhelm and unfulfillment. That woman, and I'm speaking to mostly women, knowing that this can certainly happen to men, but just because I serve a community of women, everything looks good on paper. Until nobody knows, and then all of a sudden, health crisis, marriage crisis, just super unhappy, doesn't get along with their kids, whatever it is, like something just breaks. And how do we get here? Because we haven't slowed down enough to make time for the things that actually really matter. Somewhere in our energetic, karmic, generational DNA or our childhood, which we know a lot of this stuff comes from, and again, of course, I'm not a therapist, and however, I will say that I do know through the work that I do, I see how our relationships with our mom and our dad in our childhood impact a lot of who we become, a lot of our relationship to ourselves, our feminine and masculine self. And for a lot of the women that I serve, they appear to be what we would think of as thriving in their masculine energy. And because it looks good on the outside, it's really hard to let go of. It's hard to let go of the behaviors, the patterns, and the beliefs that have led to success. They've led to a good paying job. They've led to maybe even a good marriage or a life that is pretty good. But if you really get these women in a space of truth and clarity and to slow down, they're on the verge of tears. They're overwhelmed and exhausted, and they're so tired of keeping it all together. And I will share from my personal point of view, I have been there. And I just refuse at this point in my life to go there again. I refuse to do anything that isn't from a place of relaxed joy and that feels good. I'm also almost 46 years old. I've made all those bad decisions. I've had 2 health crises. I've had a business financial crisis through a bad business partnership. I've had those things that have been super hard choices. Thankfully, I have an amazing marriage of 20 years. I think we all experience similar things. It just shows up differently. But it usually shows up in some type of relationship. So I want to invite you to consider for a moment, what does being busy mean to you? Do you use that word? I removed the word other than recording this podcast out of my vocabulary about 3 years ago. I will never say I'm too busy. People will even say to me, "Oh, you're just so busy," or my mom will say this to me. And I respond, "I'm not busy. I consciously choose everything that fills up my day." To me, busy means misaligned. Busy means not present. It means not being intentional. So the word doesn't align with how I choose to fill up my day. Do I have a full life? Yes. Is it the way that I choose it? Yes, it is. I travel a lot. I work with amazing women. I clean my house. I cook. I exercise. Some things I would like to create more time for, and I will. We're always finding our flow. There's always something speaking louder to us in one month than it is the other. But how much of your day are you really being intentional and spending time doing the things that you want to do? And what I mean by that is, are you showing up the way that you want to, even in your job? Like, we have to, I guess that's another belief we could explore too. Most of us have to have a job, to go to work, to bring in an income to support our lifestyle. Many of us are in a job that we don't love. or many people, I should say. I'm finding less and less of those, I think, just because of the work that I do, working with a lot more entrepreneurs, women who are creating businesses they love. But I also coach executives into roles and positions and income that they love and help them realize that it's not about necessarily what you do, but how you feel and how you show up when you're in that role. Everything serves a purpose. And for some of you, right now, your executive role, if you're thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, your executive role is providing financial stability for you. You get to choose how much of your energy that your job gets from you. And if you choose to balance that, you could create more energy and space to think of the thing that you want to do down the road. But where does this story come from that busy equals important? Here's what I think, and I'd love to know what you think. It's like my favorite poem that I've shared with you guys before, Our Deepest Fear from Marianne Williamson. It's not that we are inadequate, it's actually that we're powerful beyond measure. And so I think that when amazing, brilliant women like us, like the women that are in my community that I serve, I mean, truly, like every woman I work with is so multi-talented. She can be good at anything. It's almost like it's her shadow. Because then that makes it harder to say no, because it's like, well, I can do it. And we always talk about how just because you can doesn't mean you have to. We get to choose from a place of joy. And I wonder if because we can figure out a way to do things, because things can come maybe easier to us than they do other people, if we almost have to make things harder so that we don't feel rejected or feel like people are going to think we think we're better than them. I am really curious about that. So if this is resonating for you, I'd love to know. Because I've been sitting with that. Like, I watch these women play super small with busyness because they don't allow themselves. It's like ease equals either naturally gifted or maybe, I don't want to say the word lazy. I don't love that word, but like we're not willing to work hard. And there's some sort of like pride in working hard. It's like if you work hard and make a lot of money, let's just go there for a second. Well, nobody's really going to say anything bad about you. But if you make a lot of money not working hard, people are going to judge you. That's a belief that could happen. And even with the women I work with, even the executives, I mean, sometimes that belief comes through is like, well, no, actually, you know what? Everything is right where I want it to be. I'm getting paid well for a job that it's okay. It's not like dream job, but I'm actually being taken care of really well right now. And I don't actually have to do all this extra hours and extra work because I'm actually really good at what I do. So where does this story, why do you think we make this badge of honor around working hard and this busyness? Where does that come from that we think that makes us more important? That then people won't judge us if we work harder? Like hard work. I know there's some generational aspect to that. I have clients with, especially if you have immigrant parents, like it is deeply ingrained that you had to work hard to earn your freedom. There are those patterns. There are those generational beliefs. And if we think about it, here I'm sitting here as a 46-year-old in the year 2023. So my parents lived through the Depression. They had nothing. So 3 generations later, live in a totally different world. But that's not that long ago in the big picture. What would it be like if you chose today to choose work, to make decisions, to create momentum in your work from a place of ease and alignment, the things that come naturally to you, And when it was easy and when it came natural to you, you didn't have to create extra steps to make yourself feel important because of guilt or shame that others have to work harder. Yeah, some others do have to work harder at some things that might come naturally to you, but that's not about you. Why do you think we place an importance on hard work and busyness? What would change if you decided today to rewrite that belief? Hard work equals success, busyness equals important. What would happen if we just embraced and believed that we can be valued and valuable, that we can be loved and lovable, that we can be good enough on our best and worst days? And we don't have to overwork or overachieve to be any of those, to be lovable, to be valuable, to feel good enough to be worthy. We don't have to prove anything. We can just take aligned action in the necessary effort and energy and amount that is needed to complete the task. Because that physical act of doing and not being is a distraction, keeping us from the thing that we want most. Most of you want clarity, peace, the sense of freedom, more joy. You just want to feel relaxed and worthy in your knowing. And if you're spending your day addicted to busyness, you're avoiding the truth of who you are. You're avoiding the truth of your life. You're avoiding the present moment. So I leave you with this. What is one way that you know, or one relationship that you know brings enough discomfort that you immediately go on your cell phone, right? Like that's a subconscious habit that happens because we're uncomfortable with the stillness in the moment. Maybe that's yours. Maybe there's a relationship in your home that you're avoiding deeper connection with. What is the relationship in your life, in your home, or at work that you're avoiding? Or it's your health? What is that relationship you're avoiding by staying busy? And what are you ready to do about it? What is the relationship in your life or the change in your life that you're avoiding by staying busy? And what is it costing you? Super good question. I'd love to hear what comes up for you. Thank you so much for joining in again. And I look forward to seeing you on the podcast next week at any time. You're welcome to join our 5-Element Wealth, that's WELLTH, Facebook community to share what comes up for you on the podcast. Always looking forward to just hearing from people and what their experience is. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Aloha.
The content of this podcast is to educate, inspire, and inform you of pathways to an embodied healing self. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice from your medical doctor, therapist, registered dietitian, or nutritionist for any questions you may have regarding your diagnosis or condition.
Friends, and thank you so much for joining again each week on the Body and Soul Wisdom Podcast, formerly the Embodied Healing Self Podcast. I am so deeply honored to share the space with you every week. I know that there are many other podcasts that you could be tuning into, and our community is expanding and growing more with each new episode. I'd like to invite you to come on over to jenmons.com/tribe
and receive some of the wonderful gifts that we have for you: a meditation bundle, energetic alignment, 5-element wealth, prosperity consciousness. We have a ton of different gifts available for you to enjoy. Now, we have one small favor to ask. In order for this podcast to get into the hearts and souls of like and light-minded people, we need your support. We would love your review, and would love it if you'd head on over to jenmons.com/podcast to leave a review or leave one on iTunes, so that we can continue to share the love beyond out into the world. Thank you so much again for joining in. We'll see you next week.